ようやくお別れできます。
ジョーカー、そいつ妙な反応の正体。
Persona 5 The Royal came out a couple weeks ago, and with it a ton of new changes. There's a new playable character, there are 2 new confidants, there's a new palace, there are a new persona, and there's even a 3rd semester. And on top of all that, there are a bunch of other little small changes that are littered throughout the entire game. Now, for this preview, I am going to be assuming that you have played the original Persona 5, so if you haven't, here's a quick little TLDR. If you're on the fence about playing the original Persona 5 or waiting for the Royal, I would say just wait for the Royal to come out. It's the entire original game, plus you have a bunch of new additions, all the new changes, everything. It's basically just a better version of the original Persona 5. So if you are planning to get the Royal, or you think you might want to play Persona 5 and don't mind waiting, there's really no reason to get the original game when you could just wait a little bit longer for Persona 5 The Royal. Now, the footage you are seeing for this video has come from my live stream over at twitch.tv/RoslinGaming. Quick little plug, I will leave a link in the description below if you want to come over and hang out. But that's going to be why you're going to see a little copy of me in the lower left hand corner that isn't necessarily syncing up with the voice you're hearing in this video. And with that out the way, let's go ahead and get into it. So a few of the bigger changes you're going to notice when you first boot up the game, one, you're going to notice that there's going to be a new opening theme song and animation, and the title screen is going to be different. But after that, what you'll notice is when you're going through the prologue, where you're escaping from Sai's palace, this has actually been changed a little bit. So in the original game, if you remember correctly, you were jumping over the chandelier, sneaking around, you fought a battle, then did a little more sneaking, fought a battle, then you got out of the palace, and then you found the police waiting for you. Well, that still happens. What changes though is after your first battle by yourself, you take a different route, and in this new route you go into another, like a little bit larger of an area, you get ambushed, and upon this ambush, the new character, Yoshizawa Kasumi, arrives, and she takes out a couple of the enemies, gets her little grand entrance, and then the two of you actually team up for a battle, 2 on, I think it was like 3 or 4 Persona. I forget exactly how many it was, but you get the picture. You get a small taste of the new character. She then takes her leave, and the rest of it proceeds on as the original game. The next thing you're probably going to notice is the addition of new character portraits, specifically the ones that are in the lower left-hand corner of the screen when the characters are talking. They've updated the models and also added new models in addition to the original ones that were in the game. And what this does is it actually gives a lot more facial expressions to the characters in these little character portraits, which it's a nice little touch. Also, if you bring up your phone in the spring, so specifically in April, you'll notice that there are cherry blossoms floating in the background of the screen. And also while you're walking around outside, like when you're going to school, or if you go into the courtyard of the school, you'll notice cherry blossoms not only falling, but also accumulating on the ground. It's just, a cool little thing that shows, hey, this is springtime in Japan. There is also a nice little quality of life change in that on days where you either go to the palace, or you decide to go to Mementos, or maybe there's a story scene or whatever that takes up one of your 2 or both your free times that you would normally get. Whenever you come back in the original game, you couldn't really do anything within Udubudon, right? You had to basically go to bed, otherwise Morgana would yell at you. Well, this time, as long as it takes place within Udubudon and is not talking to Sojiro, you can basically do it. So come back from a palace, instead of having to go to bed immediately, you could study, you could, do a crossword puzzle, you can make some coffee, you can, watch a DVD. It's a nice little change. However, it does come with one little caveat. And that one caveat is, another area of the game has kind of been nerfed. if you were like me, then in the original game, you liked to abuse the Big Bang Burger challenge as well as the family restaurant in Shibuya to get a lot of early game points for both, guts and intelligence and whatnot. Well, both of those two things are now locked for the entire first month. In fact, you don't get them until about midway through May. But it's not all bad because there is an entire new area in Kichijoji for you to go to that has a number of other activities that you can do, one of the main ones being going to a bar where you can play darts and pool. These have a couple other effects I'll talk about a little bit later, but it is a way to get a few stats as well that you otherwise may have been lacking. And finally, for the city changes that I want to talk about, there is one that comes about in the middle of June. I think it's the early June. So getting a little bit into the game, not quite so much of the early stages, but I did want to talk about it. You can actually take the two twins from the Velvet Room and show them around to places you've been. So it does specifically say that you have to have been to the place and done whatever the activity is there, but if you have, you can bring them along. So like the first one is the Big Bang Burger. If you have gone to Big Bang Burger and you've done the Big Bang Burger challenge, then you can take them and they can do the challenge with you. Now, you don't really get any points or anything for this, you don't gain any stats or anything, but what you do get for doing this is, in addition to the getting to see more about their characters and expanding upon who they are and their personalities and whatnot, they'll give you little stat cards that have abilities on them that you can use to give specific abilities to your persona. And of good note of this is a lot of the ability cards they give you are used for the persona that you need to craft for their confidant. Speaking of confidants, there are new ones. Obviously, Kasumi has her own confidant, and you get to activate that pretty early into the game, though it is capped at 5 until you progress much later into the story. Then you also have the new guy, the new counselor, who comes after the events of Kamoshida's palace, and his name is Maruki Takuto. And he, like I said, he's a counselor. The big thing about his confidant is he gives you abilities that sort of support the main character in battle, as well as giving you permanent increases to your SP. So some of the bonuses he gives you are things like you have a chance to cast Concentrate on yourself or Charge at the very beginning of battle, or you have a chance to restore some SP when you're low on SP. And then later on he gets abilities that boost the chance for these things to happen. Kasumi, on the other hand, she's a pretty traditional confidant for a character who becomes playable. She offers you things that help you in battle, like making it to where you can avoid getting surprise attacked. Later on, she gives you the option to use this new wire you get that allows you to traverse palaces differently. She allows you to use that to actually trigger fights from ranged. The other big confidant that changes is Akechi. So if you remember in the original game, his confidant ranked up as you progressed through the story. That is no longer the case. The initial confidant, when you first become confidants with him, this happens automatically, and I believe his last 2 levels are also story related. But everything in between there, you actually have to go out of your way to rank up. So next I want to go over some of the changes to the palaces as well as the battle system. So for the palaces, they've received a number of updates. Specifically, they've been rearranged in some cases to account for the new grappling hook. So you now have a grappling hook which allows you to get to more elevated areas or traverse a palace in multiple ways from what you may not have been able to do in the original game. And like I said, with the confidants, you eventually get to use this grappling hook to engage enemies from ranged, but the first and primary focus is for traversing palaces in new ways that you weren't able to in the original game. And with this comes a new type of item to find in the palace in the form of these 3 skulls. There are 3 skulls per every palace, and every time you find a skull, you are healed your SP by a small amount, and when you collect all 3 in a palace, they combine to form an accessory. So far, the 2 accessories that I have gotten, one of them gave me Media as a cure spell, and the other one gave the equipped character a passive ability that allowed them to cancel out any weakness they had on their character. So some pretty powerful accessories that you can get. There's also a new shop if you're exploring Mementos with a guy named Jose, and he actually comes into play with the accessories you get from collecting the 3 skulls in the palaces, because if you bring one of those accessories to him, he will upgrade it into something stronger. For example, the one that gives you the heal spell, it instead this time changes it to a heal spell that also provides a stat boost buff, something I believe it's attack up, if I remember correctly. So pretty cool. But he also sells you special healing items that can now be used in rest areas. These are rest area only healing items, and there's 2 different kinds. One of them that heals HP, and one of them that heals SP. And there are different levels of this, so like 20% SP, 40% SP, and whatnot. But to purchase these items, you don't use the regular yen that you do for everything else. You actually have to pick up these flowers that you find throughout Mementos as you're going. They basically take the place of where items used to be, and items are still there, but you can also pick up these flowers, and then you exchange them to him. He also sells accessories and whatnot as well, and I am assuming that later on in the game, his store will increase in the amount of items that he sells. But these flowers, you do need to use them every time you go to Mementos, because whenever you leave, you lose all of them that you haven't spent. But they're fairly easy to come by. My first trip to Mementos, I only went down about like 5 floors, and I got about 400 of these flowers. So they're very easy to come by. The other thing that Jose does for you is he lets you turn in stamps on a stamp card. Now these stamps are found throughout Mementos. I'm assuming there'll be a finite amount of them, because it seems like there's a certain amount per area of Mementos, and using these stamps you can get semi-permanent benefits while exploring Mementos, such as more experience points, more money, or more item drops. You can spend flowers to reset these points, which is this is why I say it's a semi-permanent thing. But the more points you've spent in a specific thing, so the more points you spend, say, towards getting increased percent of money drop rate, the more flowers it'll cost to reset those if you want to allocate those points elsewhere. The next changes you'll notice in palaces actually come in the form of battles, and that is with the bosses. Now, for the most part, the bosses are the exact same as they were beforehand, but there are new additions to them, more changes. So for example, with Kamoshida, when you are fighting his boss fight, he will at one point call in a slave, as he says, to come and bring him a volleyball so he can use it to do a big spike AoE damage on your party. The first time he calls this person in, it actually calls in Mishima. The second time he calls in somebody else who I will not mention, so you can find that out for yourself, but it's very interesting what happens here. And the way this basically changes up the battle system is, in order to prevent the AoE damage that's going to be coming into you, you can do it like you did in the original game and just guard with everybody. Or you can actually attack the person it brings in, and they will drop the ball, and that will cancel it out. There's another change that happens when you get to the second palace, in Madarame's palace, but I'll leave that one for you to figure out, because it was both really interesting and really annoying at the same time, but overall I did enjoy it. Continuing on with the battle changes, there are these new shadows called Kyoma, and whenever you run into them, they'll be kind of glowing and have a little shadowy aura around them, and they're not necessarily more powerful than other shadows that are around, but they are far more aggressive if you attack them. So the thing about these Kyoma is they'll appear in groups. Like you'll be one, and then you'll have a group of other enemies. There's like regular shadow enemies, and as long as you don't attack the Kyoma, it's not going to do anything. However, attacking it has multiple benefits. So for one, if you attack and kill it, it will give you rare items and stuff, which is really nice. But also, it will blow up and deal AoE damage to all the other enemies in the battle proportionate to how much overkill damage you deal to it. So it's a nice little, this little bit of strategy to battles when they show up. You just kind of need to be careful because they are very ruthless and relentless if you don't kill them in one turn. Other changes to the battle system actually come in the form of the Baton Pass. So unlike in the first game, you unlock Baton Pass right from the very beginning. You no longer have to unlock a character's confidant and rank them up to get it. You just have it right from the start. It's also been changed and actually kind of buffed a little bit to be better than it was beforehand. So whenever you Baton Pass to another character, they'll get a little new graphic, like an aura around them, and they'll get an increase in the amount of damage they deal and the amount of healing they deal. Whenever you pass to a second person, so the third character that would be attacking that turn, the aura changes, and then subsequently when you would pass to the fourth character in your party, the aura changes yet again, and on this one, all SP and HP costs for abilities are reduced to 0 for that character. You can further increase Baton Pass by going and playing darts. So the darts minigame will allow you to rank up each character's Baton Pass. This includes the main character as well, and there are 3 ranks. Rank 1 being the one that whenever you are the recipient of a Baton Pass, you deal more damage and you do more healing for that turn. At rank 2, this damage and healing buff is further increased, and you also heal HP when you are the recipient of a Baton Pass. And for the third and final rank, again, the HP and healing buff that you receive is again further increased, but now in addition to that, as well as the HP heal, you get an SP heal. So it really incentivizes using Baton Pass even more so than you probably were used to doing in the original game. Another thing you can do that has ranks that didn't initially have them is with technical damage. Now, unfortunately, I'm not as familiar with this one because I haven't done any of the rank ups for this, but if you also play pool at the bar in Kichijoji, you can, I believe it's rank up and give buffs such as more damage, more technical damage. So like when you confuse an enemy or put an enemy to sleep, you sometimes get a technical bonus to them, and the bonus can be altered by going to the bar and playing pool. But perhaps my favorite change that has to do with the battle system comes with how guns and ammo work. So if you remember in the original Persona 5, ammo was only refilled at the end of a palace. I believe you could get a few other things for maybe the tower confidant that kind of changed this a little bit, but for the most part you had a set amount of ammo, and that ammo, once you used that up, you had to wait until you left the palace and came back or went to another palace or whatever to refill your ammo. Now they refill after every single battle, and I really like this change because I didn't really use guns my first time around. Obviously I kept upgrading them to help with skills on my persona that took that sort of damage into account, but outside of hitting weak spots for certain shadows, I never really used them. But now I find myself using them almost every single battle because it's just a lot of free damage, and I'm really looking forward to getting more into gun customization and whatnot, something I kind of shied away from when I played the original game. So the last thing I kind of want to go over is with Persona and Velvet Room changes. Specifically, there's a new thing that have been added to all Persona, and that is the addition of a quirk on a Persona. To give an example of what this is, Jack Frost now comes with a quirk that whenever you would cast Bufu type spells, the SP cost of those spells are automatically reduced by half. Other ones I've seen are such that it increases the damage of single target magic spells by 20%. I've seen ones that increase the damage of AoE magic spells by 20%. I have seen one that regardless of the weather outside, it assumes that there's bad weather outside for the purposes of applying status effects. I've seen ones that reduce the chance that you receive status effects. There's all sorts of these little quirks, and every single persona has a unique quirk to them. Now, with the exception of specific ones, like special ones that I'm assuming like later on persona, so like the ones you get for completing a confidant's entire rank or something, or anything that's maybe from DLC or whatnot, these can all be passed down. So if you fuse Jack Frost with something else and you make a new persona, and with this new persona you want to pass down Jack Frost's quirk, you can. That is certainly doable. It's another little thing that adds more customization to the persona, and I really like it. The other thing I wanted to talk about is with the Velvet Room changes. There's one really big change to the Velvet Room, and that is the addition of challenge battles. So what you do is you talk to one of the twins and they will let you take on these special battles. There's a bunch of different types of them. There's like trial battles, there's Baton Pass challenges, there's a bunch of different things that become available as you go through the game. The only ones I currently have access to are the trial battles, and they become available to you at level 10, and then you can do a higher version of it at level 20, 30, and so on. And what these are challenges, essentially. So the very first one, for example, at level 10, you fight off 2 battles back to back against 4 persona, or 4 shadows. And what you need to do is not just win the fights, but you need to accumulate points from dealing damage. The more damage you deal, the more points you get. There are also modifiers that each, challenge has. So for example, the first challenge there has 3 modifiers. One of them is when you complete it in, I believe, 20 turns or fewer, you get I think it's 10,000 points. And then anytime you would deal Garu damage, so wind damage, you would get times 3 points. And then anytime On would deal damage, you would get 7 times points. And then the level 20 battle, the next one up, is similar. You get 15,000 points if you beat it in under a certain amount of turns. And then whenever you deal like nuke damage, you get 3 times points. And then if you deal damage with Yusuke, you get 7 times points. Now this point system works out because of the rewards that you get. There are usually 3 tiers of rewards, and you can get each reward once. And then the first reward costs a certain amount of points, second reward is a certain amount of points, and if you get the max amount of points, you get all 3 rewards. And that's going to be it for this preview of Persona 5 The Royal. I know it ended up being a lot of like, what's different, what's changed, and whatnot, but I feel for a game like this that's really more apt than being like, hey, here's what Persona's all about. Because Persona 5 is already out, the big things people are going to want to know when previewing this game is, the differences between this one and Royal. They want to know whether or not this is going to be something they want to pick up. So that's kind of why I focused on more the additions and the changes rather than just, Persona 5 itself. That being said, I'm sure there are a lot of things I missed, maybe that I forgot to cover, or maybe just forgot to take note of when I was taking notes as I was playing through the early stages of the game. And there might be questions that, you want to answer that I didn't answer for you. So if there are any things like that, you can either leave a comment in the comment section below, or you can come over to my Twitch channel. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I do stream most days over at twitch.tv/RosalindGaming. You can feel free to hop over there and ask me any questions when I'm live, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. But either way, I do highly recommend this game, even if you have already played the original Persona 5. I do think there's enough in this game to justify purchasing it again. This is especially true because of the addition of the 3rd semester. Small spoiler, it is possible to completely lock yourself out of getting the third semester. I won't say any more on that, but just keep that in mind that if you do things wrong, you will get the original Persona 5 ending. So either way, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope this has been helpful to you. And if it has, feel free to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. And I hope to see you back next time. Thanks for watching.